Welcome to East Meets West, and today I have a very special topic, special couple, special area that we're going to discuss on East Meets West. And my guest speakers here today are Ralph and Kristen Watkins from Tennessee, and they are business coaches in the mortgage industry. And our topic today is definitely about couples running businesses. And we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we face as couples in businesses. I've noticed a lot of family business have the husband and wives are running the business. And I'm sure there are some areas that you would love how to manage it better. And Ralph and Kristen, I've known them for maybe almost a year now that we're in a program together and learning from each other too. And I've seen their synergy and the way they interact as a couple, as a team. And I really think that today we're gonna learn a few things that we can also apply in our businesses, in our lives, and how we can get along better with each other and being productive, getting things done. Right. So Ralph and Kristen, welcome to East Meets West. And this is a
Thank
leadership
you.
development program. And I'm going to ask both of you to share a little bit about yourself and a little bit more about your business too. So any of you could go
You want to
first.
start, Ralph?
Sure, I'll lead off here. So I have been in sales or in one form or another my entire career. And I'm currently 62 years old. That'll be our secret. You can't tell anybody. And so that's been a minute, right? We didn't just start this way. So back in the late 90s, I got into the mortgage business, and I was in it for a couple of years, decided we want to start our own business. And at the time, my better three quarters here was managing a dental office. And she's the kind of person who she has been in management capacities pretty much anywhere she's gone. She'll go in as an assistant or as a helper to someone, and the next thing you know, she's kind of like taken over, and she's been named, now she's the office manager or whatever. So she was managing a dental office, and I came to her and I said, hey, I played the family card. I said, sweetie, we need you running this office so that I can go out and originate mortgages, help people buy homes, set them up with mortgage loans. And thankfully, that was successful. That worked. And because prior to that, we had not worked with each other. But when she came in, it was a real great synergy, because she's like, okay, I'm setting this up and this up and this up. You need to be able, she was able to look at things. She's very gifted when she looks at a physical space, or just when you talk about ideas, right? She's an organizational genius, right? She just gets things. Her mind orders things, right? She's a gifted administrator. So she's got these crazy administrative skills for organizing a space. And then she has these mad interpersonal skills as well. So she can really interact with people. She just kind of puts people at ease, kind of draws them to her, and kind of brings out, helps them feel comfortable being themselves and sharing and talking. And so all of those strengths, as she came in, she would just watch me in the office, and she would see me doing something and go, okay, that's not productive for the office. Someone else can do that. Boom. She would go hire somebody, and she would fire me from that task. It was really wonderful. Yeah. She'd go, okay, yeah, you're not good at interviewing people. Okay, so I'll handle all the interviews, or we'll bring on somebody to interview. Or you need a person to do this, and bam, she's like interviewed 3 people and she's got somebody hired. And so doing that, she would just add a person as needed. And we really, in the space of 8 or 9 years, grew into being one of the largest, private lending firms in the state of Florida, which is where we lived at the time. And then we enjoyed working together so much that we've just kind of continued to hang out. People would ask us, they say, well, how do you guys get along? Don't you get sick of being together all the time? I mean, wow, if I was with my husband or if I was with my wife, I mean, geez, we need our space. And I'm like, look, we're doing this business together, but we're not
That is interesting.
So that's kind of how it came around. What did I miss? Did I miss anything, sweetie?
Well, yeah, coming from the dental background, which was, exceedingly different. I had gotten a scholarship to go to college, and I wanted to be a dentist and specialize in pediatrics and orthodontics. And so when I married an entrepreneur, he's like, no, I really kind of think we could like work together, and I really need you to kind of work with me and whatnot. Now that wasn't right away. That came over time because we were married. We were married for about 5 years, kind of built our own little foundation of our solidified our relationship. Then we started having children. I stayed home with the girls when they were young, and then when they were of age to go to school, then he really wanted to recruit me, because at that point at our church I had gotten back into dentistry and was working for a dentist that we went to church with, and I had grown his business by 300% and had increased his cash flow because he wasn't a very good manager of money. And so when Ralph was watching me do all of that, he's like, I really need you to leave dentistry and come do this with me. And so I was willing. I didn't know how to spell mortgage, let alone, we had a mortgage. I knew that. We bought a house, but I didn't know anything else about it. So but one of the things that I enjoy doing is I feel like one of my gifts is going into, it could be a chaotic situation or just a random situation, and I can size things up pretty well. And I knew that in order for us to be successful in the mortgage business, we had to have customers, buyers of homes or borrowers that needed money to buy the house and needed the mortgage. So Ralph really is gifted with people and sales and networking with people. So I knew that we needed to free him up to focus on that activity. And so I needed to figure out, okay, well, look, we need office space, we need the technology, we need, all of the tools in which to run the office. And we needed marketing, we needed support staff. Eventually, we bought an office building. We also opened up, not only did we have our mortgage company, but we opened up a real estate holding company. We opened up a title company. We opened up a construction company. So we had lots of businesses that we were running together, which was fun. But with that comes, buying more office space and then hiring more staff and facilitating all the behind the scenes. So I felt like my job was to insulate Ralph so that he could do what he does best. And then I would facilitate getting all of the rest of the tasks done, because sales is what drives a business. And it doesn't matter if it's a tool or a widget, or if it's a service that you're selling. That's what drives the business and gets the cash flow. And so we needed that in order to be successful. And then we needed all of the other support behind. And so we kind of, we didn't know it at the time, but we just kind of sized up what his strengths were and what my strengths were as far as who did best with skill sets. And we would just be off to the races, and we didn't really interfere with each other. We would always get together and talk about, okay, I've reached a bottleneck, or this didn't work. And then we would kind of dialogue together how we could troubleshoot and fix it. but we didn't micromanage each other. We didn't have time to micromanage each other, to be honest with you. You know, we each had our own lane and we just kind of needed to stay in that lane.
Yep. It's interesting. Nice story to hear how you guys came together here. And you know what many people, as Ralph, I think, alluded to at some point here, you know, space, see one another all the time. And I thought of, okay, what might be some of the top two challenges that you guys would have had as a couple working together? And you guys can maybe elaborate how you overcame that struggle or that challenge.
Well, that's a really good question. And one of the challenges, we would see things from a different perspective. Okay. So I can remember a certain situation where I had set up this a warehouse line, which is basically just a credit line that we could borrow money against and turn around and lend it, right? So we would borrow at a low interest rate, we turn around and lend it out at a higher interest rate, and then we would make the spread on the money, right? Well, so I guess there was not a clear understanding between me and the company on exactly how many of these funds were available. So I had gone out and I had committed to fund some loans. And they said, oh, well, there's not enough room on here to fund all these loans, right? We can only do this much. And I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? Because I've committed to doing this now and they're telling me I don't have the funds. So that's going to go badly. Now, thankfully, that was before anybody could just go on and leave you a bad review and tell everybody you don't know what you're doing, right? That was pre-social media, right? But even still, word traveled fast because it was kind of a small community. So I'm like, I don't care if I have to do these loans for nothing. I'm not going to leave these people hanging, right? So I came and looked to see what I could do to trim these things back. And if I trimmed out all the money that we would make, then I could fund their loans, right? Which kind of flies in the face of why you have it, because you want to be profitable. You're not doing it to not make money, right? So I'd already committed, so I said, here's what we're going to do. Well, I shared this with the staff, who then wound up going in and talking with her. Well, she came in the office. Well, you know, she did the accounting background and she paid the bills, and she was not interested in writing loans that we didn't make any money on. So it was kind of this, I'm like, well, we have to. Well, we can't. Well, okay, you know what? We'll each go back in our space. We'll take some deep breaths and see what we can do to come up with, you know, well, as it turned out, you know, one of the loans wasn't ready to close, or we could do everything we needed to do and still make money, because everything as it turned out didn't have to close that day, and we worked through it. But there was a couple times when it was just like, you know, forehead to forehead. And it's like, all right, well, we have to figure this out and come up with a plan, because there's no plan B. Like, we have to make this work together. So where can we meet in the middle? Where can we come up with a plan that will work for both, some sort of a compromise that gets everything done, or at least hurts the least on each side? You know, so there's a few times we had to go through that. And honestly, that really takes humility and a spirit of cooperation, right? I've seen couples where, I mean, it's well documented throughout history and certain places even still now. The guy is like, I'm the head of the house and what I say goes. And then of course there's women that are up to here with that. They're not going to have anybody tell them, you know, what to do or how to do it or when to do it, right? And so there's, you know, maybe there's even hesitate to say oversensitivity there, but maybe they've been pushed around and I don't know their background, right? So there's definitely some hard-headed perspectives that can come together, and there has to be a general willingness to come up with a solution that's not all yours, right? If there's a way to get it done and be open to another suggestion, and thankfully, gratefully, we really work toward that. We try to exercise and show a real love for and respect for each other and for each other's opinions and abilities. And sometimes it takes, writing down some things and going, okay, well, you go your way, I'll go my way. And as we think of things, we'll write them down. Then we'll come back together and see if we've come up with something that might be a better way to get things done. But it all starts with a willingness to have that happen.
And part of it too, when we first got married, I came from a background where my mother had substance abuse challenges. She was an alcoholic. She went in and out of marriage relationships very easily, and was, in and out of 3 or 4. And so when I got married to Ralph, I jokingly one day said, well, you better, behave yourself or we'll end up divorced. Well, he nipped that in the bud. He said the divorce word isn't even in our dictionary. It's not in the book, the D word. It is not in our household. So literally within the first few months of us getting married, that possibility as a solution was removed. So therefore, we always had to sit down and come up with a game plan together that would work for the two of us. And if we did butt heads and disagree, we would table that decision and we would step back and we would think about it and we would pray about it, and then we would reconvene at another day and time where we would talk through it again. And it was amazing that every time we would just pause and step back, by the time we came back around, it gave us time to digest. I had time to think about his perspective. He had time to think about my perspective. And then we were able to come up with what was a mutual perspective. And so that was a huge factor. But the fact that I think so often in our society, we have throwaway marriages, and we were committed that that wasn't going to be the case. I didn't want to be a casualty of what I witnessed with my mother. And he came from a very solid family background. And so we were very committed to making sure that we weren't going to be a casualty. And so therefore the D word was removed. And so we had all the other options for solutions, and that wasn't even on the table ever. So it just kind of changes your mindset that you're going to figure it out. And that's what we would do. And that's what we would focus on. But I think in addition to that, I remember the pastor who married us, in his sermon, as before we got to the wedding vows and everything, he said, you, Kristen, are to come alongside Ralph and be his helpmate and to support him and to be his encourager, not to be on his back. And I've never forgotten that. So it's like, all right, well, I need to affirm him. I need to encourage him. I don't need to beat him up. He knows when he makes a mistake. He beats himself up, but he needs to be told it's okay. This is a safe place. If we make a mistake, all right, well, what do we learn from it? And let's move on. And so, there's lots of times when you're running a business that you make the best choice and decision at the time, but then for whatever reason, it backfires, and we just have to accept it, and we accept it together. It's not a blame game. It's not well, if you hadn't done that. No, it's we did this together, and what did we learn from it together? And so there's no blame game ever.
Yep. I've heard between the two of you, it's about pausing, stepping back, and then come back and deal with things. And indeed, sometimes I think that's where the flare happens and the conflict comes in, when the parties, them are both hot-headed in that moment here and then trying to make a decision. But I like that the timeout, go and get it sorted and in your mind, and then come back and come up with a solution. And I heard about humility too, and that made me think of this whole thing about what Ralph said too, about men being the head, and in a business too, how that might be playing out Because you hear a lot of that in the homes that, well, God says, I am the head of the house. You need to listen to what I say. And sometimes that is not, the right decision. And I could remember a time a while back, a few years back, we were going to purchase a vehicle. So I needed a new vehicle. And we went to see this vehicle. And I did not like the vehicle. Something about it was totally off. And I said to my husband, no, don't purchase this vehicle. Let's look for something else. And he went ahead and purchased the vehicle. And, I can laugh at it now because we're still alive. But the first day I'm going to drive that vehicle to take our 3-year-old to her school. And the vehicle, the wheel, apparently the guys them didn't put on the lug nuts back properly on the wheel. And while it's going,
Oh,
I started to hear this clock, clock, clock story as I pulled over like umpteen time on the way going to see what is it, but I could not figure it out. And so I took my time, and it just like really loud. We got to the school, I parked there and I refused to move. And then he came and when he drove it, he figured out what was wrong with it. But the part of, the thought of the speed that I was going at, if that wheel had, fly out, and it could have cost both of our life that morning. And after that, with that same vehicle, we had so many problems, so many things, different things was happening with the vehicle. So we had to sell it. And I keep thinking back, the husband and wife try to make decisions, and then sometimes, we might not value one another's opinion on certain things, and those might be challenges that as a couple in business, especially in the home is one thing, you also making decisions, but in a business here, you have a team running, you have people who are looking up to both of you in the business, and how your relationship also affects that in the business. And I thought about that. I know that all married couple have problems. And one of my question here to you would be, how do you keep, the maybe feud or something that you might have among each other? How do you keep it out of the business? And so when you get to work, look, we're still talking business here, despite we might have some difference going on at home. Have you guys experienced things like that?
That's a great question. Because we work together, I can't separate them, right? It's not like, oh, we got this thing going on, so at home we're not talking, but at work we'll come in and we'll have this conversation like everything's okay, and the door shuts, and then I'm going back to being mad. No, like it's if something's off, we have to resolve it. It's got to get resolved, or nothing works. It's not like work works and home doesn't work. No, it all works or none of it works, right? So we don't have hang your troubles at the door and come on in and then we go back home and resume our hostilities. That doesn't work that way for us, right?
Yeah, but I think part of it too is, like with the story that you shared with that car, Ralph has learned, we've been married 40 years. So we've certainly been exposed to a lot of different scenarios and situations. And he's learned that when my gut and my instincts are speaking that I don't think we should do this, or there's a red flag, and I don't know what the red flag is about, but just my gut is like, let's pass. There were times where he'd be like, no, I think we need to persevere. And I'd be like, okay, let's go for it. And then he would learn that my gut was correct. And then he, the next time, would be more cautious and be more willing to listen and to go, you know what, if you're not at peace about it and I'm not at peace about it, then we're just not going to do it. We both have to be on the same page. And being on the same page is so critical. And I think the other thing that, in the 40 years of marriage that we've really focused on is making sure that we invest in our marriage and that we do marriage enrichment every single year. I mean, most people spend more time and effort and energy, changing the oil in the car and getting it washed and tuned and all of that, where they don't do the tune-ups on their marriage. And so for us, we prioritize, and we will read a book, we'll go to a marriage conference, we'll do a video series, we do something to enhance our communication and our marriage. And some of, like, I was thinking, some of my favorite books, like one is Love and Respect, where men need to feel respected, but women need to feel loved. And that was Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. And then one of my other favorites is Five Love Languages. Well, my top love language is quality time. Well, Ralph's top love language is words of affirmation. They're very different. So I have to work at affirming him, and he has to work at spending quality time with me, just sitting on the deck, having a glass of wine, watching the sunset, whatever it might be. But I want that quality time. But we learn these things through these classes or books that we read. And I think the most recent book that we both really enjoyed was Sheet Music by Kevin Lehman. And he's a phenomenal teacher. He has books on parenting children and on marriage, a variety. But sheet music, he's like, if you've ever been to a concert and the musicians are all tuned really well together, the harmonies and the music are just incredible. And they make you feel good and they make you smile and everything. He said that's the way a marriage should be. We should be in harmony together and all tuned up the same way. Where if we're not, and one of us is out of tune, it is a not pleasant concert to listen to and stuff. And I loved his analogies in his book Sheet Music. So for us, there are times where it's going to be challenging and you're going to disagree and you're going to butt heads, but there are things that you can do to learn how to address. It's like, oh, okay, remember that book that we read? They suggested trying this, and we would try it and go, you know what, that went pretty well and stuff. So taking time to do things together to grow your marriage, I think helps you that way you've got the tools, you've been practicing the tools so that when the going gets tough, you're able to utilize the tools that you learned so that you can face the challenges better together.
So speaking of Dr. Kevin Lehman, one of his most famous books is entitled Sex Begins in the Kitchen. So it's not what you think when you hear the title. That doesn't mean that's where the evening's lovemaking starts, is on the kitchen counter, right? That's not where he's coming from at all. But his point is, if you want to have a relationship that naturally flows to a wonderful intimacy, that begins all the way back before you get anywhere near the bedroom. That's like hanging out, maybe cooking dinner together, preparing, even though, look, I can do some scrambled eggs, right? Or I can make some nice tuna fish or like whatever, right? She's the cook and I'm her sous chef, but we have a great time when she'll want to she has some nice recipe she's working on. I'm like, okay, what do you need? I need this. Good, I'm on it. So I'm like her little assistant running around the kitchen and cleaning stuff up when that's done. And it's just that kind of cooperation and doing things together and accomplishing something that continues to build the relationship so that, well, later on, there might be a nice romantic evening or romance. It all comes from that working together in a respectful, and it actually becomes quite a fun way. I've just really learned to enjoy the time that we have together, whatever we're doing, and then everything else builds and radiates out from there.
Nice. Yeah, I can see that if you're working on it at home, might be easily get transferred into the work environment too. That's how you interact with each other, because it will depend a lot on the relationship you have at home too. So if I may ask this part here, I know that in some countries it's a more male dominated world, per se. But what I would like to hear from you, what would be some of your advice, like to the male, Ralph, if you can share maybe to the male and the female, in from your perspective that, the husband and the wife that is running a business, some of this male ego that might be there in some, and then also as a male, what would you look at that you would advise the female, the wives that are in the business with their husband? As a male, what would you say that really helped you, right? And how you can help a male and maybe some of his ego, maybe from that side of the, room, what to look for and what they could do to help get along better with their spouse in that business.
Sure. So, something that's been talked about for a long time is that men are stronger than women, or women are the weaker sex. Okay. And now it's become politically incorrect to bring that up, and that's sexist, and you can't say this and you can't say that. Look, I think we can all agree, barring some surgical thing that somebody goes through, as a general rule, physically, men are bigger and stronger than women are. That's where it ends. And obviously there's exceptions even in those. Okay. Not all men are stronger than all women. Okay. But as a species or as a gender. But when it comes to other abilities, using your mind, determination, I think one of the strongest people I ever met was my mother. When I think of what she endured, like, we went through some very, very trying times, very, very difficult times. And the way that she bore up under that is just nothing short of amazing. She passed on years ago, and I miss her terribly, right? But when I think of that, it's an inspiration to me. They say, women are like tea bags. Have you ever heard that one? Women are like tea bags. You don't know their strength until they're in hot water, right? And so we were in some hot water, and she and her strength really came out. And there's a TV show I haven't watched, not because I am trying to make a statement, we've just never gotten to it, but several people have recommended the show. It's called Naked and Afraid, and they take a guy and a girl, some man and a woman who don't know each other. They put them out in some place naked, and they have to accomplish some goal. They have to get from here to there, and they are bereft of resources. So they got to think on their feet and be creative, and they're exposed to the elements, so it has nothing to do with the fact that they're not wearing any clothes. That's not what the show is about. It's how do they work together. And in almost every show, it's the guy who cracks. It's the guy who's like, I can't do this. I'm done. And the girl's like, will you man up? Look, that's not an option. Turning back, nobody's going to come out here in a helicopter and pick us up. We've got to get from here to there. And it's the woman who is usually the one who's able to get bring them together as a team, get in the same place mentally, get them to focus, right? So what I would say to guys, keeping in mind with this, is you really need to leave any notion that you're the tough guy, or you're the leader, or you're the natural, or you're the strong. So you're entitled to this leadership position. You really need to leave that at the door. We need to come in and figure out what it is we're working on, and what are our strengths. Now, if there's something that you know more about and you are more proficient at because you've been doing it, well, then maybe that does make sense to take kind of a leadership role, but that doesn't mean barking orders and commands. It just means being a mentor in that space. But as we have in our relationship a lot, there's things, frankly, she's good at, and I am not, right? So if we come into something, it's like, okay, she's like, okay, I got this. So we need to this and this and this. She's already got the whole thing mapped out. Good. It's almost like the same thing in the kitchen when I'm her sous chef. There's certain projects we're working on. Her natural organization and administrative skills just come out. she's gifted at knowing what needs to happen now and that affects the big picture, what the big picture looks like. I mean, she sees all of this, and she's got great empathy. In the DISC profile, the attributes file, we call this kind of person a triple master, right? Because they can do all this, they keep it all in their head at the same time. She's really gifted at that. Frankly, I'm not. So the things that we've gotten done and accomplished together, frankly, I've relied heavily on her organizational skills to do that. And then I can come in with the interpersonal and the networking and the sales skills and things that, so they really do complement each other well.
And I think part of that too is recognizing what he needs to be focusing on, what I need to be focused on. And because I am the one who typically maps out the journey of the steps that need to happen, he's very accepting and humble to go, okay, tell me what I need to do. And so in that sense, it's not like I'm bossing him around. It's just that I'm thinking through all of the logistics, and then how can we both accomplish the tasks that need to happen, or do we need to delegate that to one of our other team members that work for us, and how can we best utilize them in addition to that? So it's not he's the boss or I'm the boss. We're both collectively taking our strengths and combining the best together so that.
And you just got muted, honey. There's been many times, there's been several times, and I'm sure there'll be more in the future where things they're mapped out, and it's like, I'll go, oh, and by the way, on this one, a great way to do that, or a great tweak, or this little thing would probably make more sense for this reason or that reason. It's like, oh, okay, perfect. So we'll make that adjustment on the fly as we go. So, if you draw out a map, you draw step by step for how things get done. If there's one thing you can guarantee, it's that it's not going to go exactly according to the original plan. The original plan is a blueprint that gets you started, and then as you move through the blueprint, you're making adjustments along the way as you get more information. You'll pick up some little bit of insight that you didn't have before, that you can tweak what your original plan was and make it work better and you didn't have that information when you started. So part of that is being able to pivot and adjust, and be open to that on the fly.
Thank you, Ralph. Kristen, what would you advise the women that are working with their husbands?
Men as a general rule, they want to come off strong, and they want to make us proud. And so I think our role is to encourage them so that they can be their very best, and so that they can feel like they are succeeding and that they are worthy of the esteem that they desire. And so I still go back to, what does he need to do? What do I need to do? And if he's doing the things in his lane that are just natural for him, it's very easy for him to have daily successes. And it doesn't matter if it's a big, huge project that he just accomplished, or he had a killer sales week and he, brought in all kinds of new business. It could be taking out the garbage and acknowledging and saying, you know what, honey, thank you so much for taking the time to take out the garbage, or thank you so much for doing those dishes tonight. It's even in the little things, it's affirming them, so that, I think so much of it is making sure that I'm doing things to support him, which gives him the desire to do additional things to support me. And so it's that collaboration of us working together.
Thank you for that.
I was going to say, you brought up another really good point there when you talked about doing the dishes or taking out the trash or that kind of thing. I've met people that have been married for decades and then learned that the guy has never done the dishes ever, not one time in 20 years. I'm like, dude, seriously. Like, how is it you're not sleeping on the couch? The guys don't do dishes. I'm like, look, okay. You earlier you cited scripture, and how the man is the head of the house, and so women should submit to men, and that. Well, they always leave out the part where it says, and a man is to serve his wife the way that Christ served the church. Well, how did Christ serve the church? I don't know the scope of our whole meeting here, but like Christ died for the church, paid the ultimate sacrifice, like would literally do anything for them. There was nothing that was beneath him. When he brought in the disciples, that he washed their feet, much to Peter's embarrassment and chagrin, right? He says, I have to do this. This is, if I can't wash your feet, then you're not my. So he served. So it's the husband's job. Now we're kind of moving from business back into the household, but it's the husband's job to serve his family, to serve his wife, to serve his children. And somebody that thinks they're too good for that, they need to talk to somebody. They need like some professional help with that. I can't overstate it. It's so critically important.
Yep. Thank you for adding that, Ralph. And I'm sure
Yes.
the men and the women are hearing, not only on business side of it, also it's on marriage side you guys are touching, and your relationship development side of it. And I do appreciate that you're adding that kind of value to all of us here today. But I know we're coming to the end of the program, and I'm gonna ask you both if there's something you would like to leave with the viewers, any advice or anything that comes to your mind that you would like to close off with today's session with.
I would say be your spouse's cheerleader. Life is hard and we're always going to be faced with challenges, but when we can be each other's cheerleader, it's when we have the tough times that we can really appreciate the mountaintop experiences. And when we have those mountaintop experiences, they don't last forever. So there's seasons in our lives, where a winter may be kind of bleak, but then springtime's coming. And so I think if we can be each other's cheerleader through all of the seasons, it makes the journey a whole lot more enjoyable.
Yes.
I would throw out, she mentioned one of the things our pastor said in our wedding, and I think the exact quote was, talking to her, may you be on his team and not on his back. Because I remember, on and on in the same, on his team, but not on his back. Well, that totally goes both ways. Like totally, so everything should, the conversations, the interaction, the conduct, all the intercourse that happens there, it needs to be what is really best for our team, what will build us as a team personally, if you're certainly in business, and not on somebody's back, pointing out their faults, pointing out what they did wrong, pointing out what they need to do better, right? And just like simple things, if you're correcting a situation, it's not the person, it's this is the way that this may work better over here. It's not like, hey, you screwed up. It's like, oh, we could do this even better, or this is the way that this will improve, or is more efficient, or whatever. So on their team, not on their back.
And I think another little note is, depending upon the size of your staff, if you disagree on a particular topic, don't do it in front of the staff. Hold that thought and then talk about it in private, and then work through it. And there were times, because we always had weekly staff meetings with our team, that I wouldn't necessarily agree, or he might not agree, but then we would go, off-site, talk through it. And then we may have to come back in front of the staff and say, you know what, last week we talked about doing things this way, but thinking through it further, we're going to go a different direction. So we don't want to undermine or demean our spouse in front of the rest of the staff. And I think that's probably a key point in the business world to say. Same thing with your children. You don't want to debate in front of the kids. You may each have a different perspective on how to handle something with children, but the children know how to use that against you and whatnot. So you always want to do that offsite too when the kids aren't watching, and then come back together and be on the same page. So same thing, whether it be the household with the family and the kids or with your staff, you want to make sure that you're always equally united. And because the staff knows, I mean, we had our company for a long time, and there were a couple of awkward moments, but then we would always go back, both of us independently, and apologize to each of the staff members that we made them feel uncomfortable and whatnot too. So I think that another side of humility on that front is important as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that advice. And so Ralph,
Sure.
thank you so much for your time. I know the busy schedule. We were working on this to get them synchronized in our time, and it's been a while. And I do appreciate that you guys taking the time out to add value to us. And I'm sure many who will be listening to this program, I do encourage all of you to share it, like it, also comment, even ask any question. Kristen and Ralph will lovingly answer you. And yes, so
Be happy to do
add
that.
value. Yes. And so do ask any questions that you may have and post it in the comment section below this video, and we will also add value to you. So thank you again, Ralph and Kristen. Thank you guys who are listening to this program and who's viewing it. Again, do share it, and we look forward to seeing you in the next session.